Nobody has any question for Dr. Suhail?
Obviously, the news of the day is consuming.
All what's going on in the Middle East and in the Islamic world, and we don't have any question for him about it.
The question, I don't know if it's a question, I witnessed the 1967 war when I was a student in Beirut then. And 60 years later on, the thing is ongoing. With no end in sight.
This, what's going on in Gaza right now, it's much worse than 1967 war.
Correct.
It's similar to 1948 war. In 1940, if the Arabic armies didn't enter the war in 1948, the Palestinians, they will stay home that time. The only reason for the Palestinians left their land was the Arabic armies tried to liberate Palestine, and they create all these refugees problems. In 1967, this didn't happen. What happened in 1967, they just took the land, they kept the Palestinian, but in the Syrian, in the Golan Heights, they kick the Muslim from Golan Heights. The Muslim Sunni, unfortunately, let me say that, they kept the Druze. They didn't let them leave home. But what happened in Gaza right now is similar to 1948 war. After October 7, and we see all this refugees crisis right now. It's totally different what happened in 1967. Dr. Suhail with us, and I think he can start.
اوكي طيب السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. And I just heard the last part of the discussion, so I'm not sure what was the main point of discussion.
It's no, Brother Jalal, he say he was in Beirut in 1967 when he watched the 1967 war. I tried to explain to him, is this what's going on right now is totally different what happened in 1967. After 1967 was no refugees problems from the Palestinian side, was a refugees problem from the Syrian side. We have I think about 50,000 Syrian left Golan Heights. That's it, But what's going on in Gaza right now, I think it's more dangerous toward the Palestinian cause than what happened in 1967. Probably this is the last episode in the Palestinian crisis, I think, unless something big happened again.
No, these are, complicated issue to address. It's and I always believe that if you don't have the right diagnosis of the problem, you will never solve it. If you don't tackle the roots of the problem, if you don't first identify the roots of the problem and you don't tackle them, no problem will be solved, whether it is personal, family, and international. No problem can be solved unless the roots are identified and addressed. I'm not sure how we reached that point any time in our recent history. Our diagnosis has always come short, superficial, or focuses only on one aspect of the problem, or, which is more common, confuses symptoms with root causes. And therefore, we deal with the symptoms, we sometimes fix them, but the problem continues because we still did not tackle the root cause of the problem. It happened time and again, and unfortunately, it still continues to happen. The other thing is the wishful thinking, التفكير بالتمني. A lot of time we found ourselves pursuing illusions. They exist only in our minds. They're not. Maybe some of you were, they are old enough to know that at certain point in time, Arabs in particular counted, and maybe Muslims in general, counted on Soviet Union. Soviet Union is going to be our supporter and our allies, and etc. And you know what Soviet Union have done to number of countries? They let them down, and the last one was Iraq and others. I mean, they let you down in a minute. And then you can see nowadays people are, I don't know, counting on Iran, which I don't know what Iran is going to do. Iran is a country that has its own national agenda and pursuing its national interest. That's what their leaders are doing. And to think that Iran or Turkey, by the way, it's not only Iran or Turkey is going to come and do the job for you, that's an illusion. Same thing if you're counting on the West, they're going to come and fix the problem for you. All of these are simply illusions. I mean, foreign powers came to Iraq, toppled the regime, and look what Iraq is doing now. They came to Libya, they toppled the regime, and Libya is still in a mess because they're not charity organization. I mean, they're not coming to serve you or to do the job for you. I don't know when are we going to wake up and realize that sometimes taking a step back and looking at the problem from all angles and realize that the problem is going to require generations, and they're going to require a lot of wisdom, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of efforts, and there are no quick solution or easy solution or cheap solutions for problems that happened over the centuries. And I believe that Palestine is one of the consequences of a bigger problem. I mean, if Muslims were not in very marginal and weak, they would not have their sacred place manage it like that. I mean, or many times people will like attack it, and people are struggling to protect a sacred place that is the Masjid al-Aqsa. So it is a manifestation of much bigger problem. Even though, as I mentioned all the time, that the resistance is the right for any people who are occupied. But let's not fool ourselves. We hope and wish that Palestine would be free, but let's not fool ourselves to think that will be the end game or things will be rosy. Probably Palestine, if that happens, it will go through what most Arab and Muslim countries went through before. After the occupation, they found themselves ruled by oppressive and corrupt regimes. I mean, and we have seen it. We have seen a sample of it in
Like
93.
Algeria.
In 93, we have seen a sample of it that after the Oslo Accord, the Palestinian Authority was much more brutal on Palestinians than the Israelis when they were torturing people and putting them in jail and coordinating with the Israeli intelligence, giving them information. That's a sample maybe of what's going to happen. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't work to free it. No, it should be, but we have at least to learn that lesson, that occupation is it's a manifestation of bigger problem, and independence should be only one step it shouldn't be the end goal. That mistake should not be repeated again. When people think that the moment we push the colonizations out of the country, then we just celebrate and go home thinking that the mission accomplished. Its mission is not accomplished. You just came back to zero. It's like if you want to use the math scale, you went to negative, or you're drowning, and you just came back to the surface. Now it's the time to start working, and you should never accept after occupation to have like corrupt and oppressive regimes, because they're no different than occupation, if not worse, in many cases. And I heard this from old people in Tunisia, and I believe even in Algeria also, that people were saying, I mean, but especially Tunisia, to be, say, on the safe side, that people were saying the French occupation treated us better than the regime that came after it. The people, the students in the dorms, and the soldiers who fasted Ramadan, they were given special treatment under French occupation. Under the Tunisian regime, they were forbidden from fasting. So it's people went from that situation to worse. So anyway, to go back to the main issue is we should never rush to come up with a diagnosis that is short, superficial, or partial, and then spend years working and putting a lot of efforts and sacrifices and pay a heavy price and solving what we thought is the problem, just to discover that was not. And they mentioned, I think here, I mentioned also in Jumu'ah, that this happened at least in recent history 3 times. 3 times we identify the problem, we solve it, and nothing changes. We identify what we think is the problem. One is resistance movements. They identified that the problem is occupation, not al-qabiliyya lil-istimar, as Malik ibn Nabi says, that why you were occupied to begin with. That's the root cause of the problem that you need to tackle. Yes, you need to push occupation out, but then tackle the root cause of the problem. It's like somebody who's bleeding because of a disease. You stop the bleeding and then you treat the disease. So resistance movement, great work, a lot of sacrifice, million martyrs in Algeria. Sometimes some people say it's 1.5 million or maybe even 2 million. And it happened, very successful. But then what happened to Algeria? Algeria has resources that should allow it to be very successful country and very advanced country, not where it is now. And others, same.
Very, very true.
Yeah, and then the Islamic movement, they identified the problem as people abandoned Islam. Why? People are not in the masjid. People are not praying. People are drinking. Women are not wearing hijab. So, what's the solution? Solution Islam هو الحل. Let's bring them to Islam. Go back, go to the coffee shops, go even to bars, and tell people that there is a hellfire and there is this and there is that, and you need to pray, and come back with them to the masjid. And we had masajid full, hijab everywhere. Problem solved, but nothing has changed. And then the most recent was the Arab Spring. Problem was identified as these dictators. If these dictators go, we will establish democracy and we're going to start catching up with the advanced nations. Now, those dictators were gone. They gone in Tunisia, in Libya, in Yemen, in Egypt, in Syria, very close. What happened? And before that in Iraq, and what happened? It doesn't mean that those dictators should not go. No, they should. But they are the tip of the iceberg. Now we keep dealing with the tip of the iceberg, which is what we see on the surface, not going to identify the root causes and tackle them and accept if they are bad, if they are deep, if they're gonna take generations, that's fine. At least we start doing the right thing. At least we put ourselves on track and we start moving. We don't want to keep moving in circles or we'll remain in state of loss like Tayeh. People are really lost our ways. If we resume, if we get back to the highway, and then we start driving in the right direction, we'll get there, inshallah. I mean, 1 generation, 2 generations, you don't never know. Nowadays, things can move even faster than before because of the technology, because of the things, opportunities that are available. Success stories can be produced much faster than before. But success stories, if you are on the right track, if you find your way and you resume your journey and you make sure that you identified why you lost your ways, and then you're gonna start progressing. But if you're moving in the wrong direction, no matter how fast you're going, no matter how good your car is, you're not gonna get there. And that's what we really need to know, that our situation is the product of centuries of stagnation, political stagnation and intellectual stagnation. When we accepted the dynasty rule, the absolute power that is inherited, and we accepted to freeze ijtihad, or we decided to freeze ijtihad. So centuries led to 1 century of occupation and colonization, and here we are. You think this is going to be solved by some activities here and there, or by... No. There is a major damage that happened to the Muslim mind and to the Muslim personality. I mean, if you look at what young people are thinking and doing in all parts of the world, doing startup companies. Just today, I just came to know 4 Israelis, young people, established a startup company a couple of years ago. Google is offering them $23 billion, and they're reluctant to sell it. And you have a Muslim young person, or their ultimate dream is to get a job in the government, or to get a degree and get a job and establish a family and get a car, and that's it. That's their dream. Yeah. So that has to change. People start to aim high, to be self-confident, to believe in themselves, to rediscover their religion and to be proud of it, the true religion, the one that is inspiring and empowering, not the one that holds you back and cripples you and tie your hands. No, we need that religion that was preached by Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and produced those great leaders and that great movement that changed the world in the span of 1 generation, in a condition that are much worse than ours. And we are in much better position nowadays to produce a success story.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Can I ask a couple? One, I think, as you were talking, it's a reflection. The other one is after you finish is really a question. So the first one as a reflection is, the Prophet ﷺ, because you're talking about the root cause. So kalimat al-wahn, the Prophet ﷺ, hadith tatakalab alaykum al-umam. When he said, and the Sahaba, they asked, is it because we were too few? He said, no, because يدخل في قلوبكم الوهن وما الوهن حب الدنيا وكراهية الموت. So, as we know, the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ, they're very comprehensive. So could al-wahn itself, or maybe we don't fully comprehend the meaning, which is what he said, Hubbadir is really the root cause. It is very complex to undo it. So that could be the answer, is really understanding what Wahan means and how we deal with it. The second one, I think, as you were talking, you said, okay, we had major things that we had to get rid of. You mentioned them as illusions, and well, not as illusion. You mentioned them as steps that needed to be taken. So maybe that's what it is, Sheikh, getting rid of the occupation. That's the first step. Then the sahwa, to bring people back to their deen. Maybe it was not done right, but that's another step. And the last step is really to get rid of the major obstacles to move forward as a nation, which is dictatorship. So this could be just kind of steps of that the Ummah is taken kind of forward to get rid of the, like he said, centuries of
if you want to be optimistic, we can say they are steps, but in reality, they are not, because each one of these were, if it was meant to be a step, I agree with you, but it wasn't. Each one of these was meant to be the goal, wasn't meant to be a step. And there was no leadership in place when the independence was achieved to tell people, you know what, we're not there yet. Just keep the same level of mobilization, because now we're going to build our country, and we're going to build a solid, independent country. So we need the same level of sacrifice, same level. You're not going to put your lives on the line and go to the mountains to fight, but you're going to be doing it at work and in every day, so that we can build a strong country and strong nation. That didn't happen. We had power struggle. We had people who are hungry for power, and whoever takes over establish themselves as dictatorship. And what the Islamic movement, it's another problem. The Islamic movement, the version of Islam that they brought people to, is defective. They brought people back to the Salafi understanding of Islam that focuses on the rituals and the appearances. And then after that, they add on top of it some activism and some political participation. But it is not the mission-driven of Islam, the Islam that is defined as a mission that was presented by the Prophet ﷺ. No. They brought people back, and they focused on the numbers, and they focused on sympathizers to sympathize with the movement, so that they can find them when they need them for demonstrations, and they can find them when they need them for donation, and they can find them when they need them for voting. Why? Because even these movements, they start having a goal to get to power, because they thought that they cannot implement their project unless they are in charge. So they started focusing on getting to power. Now, to get to power, what do you need? You need very strong organization, tandeem, very rigid, and you need a lot of sympathizers. So you were not trying to raise the awareness, fix the damage that happens to the mind, revive ijtihad. You didn't do that. So you didn't tackle the root causes of the problem. What you had is the same person with the same mindset, with the same thinking, with the same behavior. Used to be drinking, now he's not drinking. Was not praying before, now he's praying. She did not have hijab before, she has a hijab. So as I heard it sometimes when I was explaining like this, a physician said, basically, you mean they closed the wound without cleaning it? I said, that's exactly what it is. It's like a surgeon who had some wounds, rather than cleaning it first, they just close it, or they added a layer on top of the damage that has happened before. All of this was done out of good intention, by the way. Don't get me wrong. I mean, these people, they put a lot of efforts, a lot of sacrifice. Nobody can underestimate that. It's like the resistance movement claimed the lives of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. But the problem, the diagnosis of the problem was very superficial. People never abandoned Islam. Muslims, they did not abandon Islam. Muslims abandoned the mission of Islam. and abandoned the maqasid of Islam, that this religion is not something that you just practice it for yourself. This religion is a mission with the clear purposes. Risala bimaqasid. These two critical words that were lost over those centuries, and they were lost by design, because those dynasty rulers, they don't want this aspect of Islam. They want the sha'air. They want the scholars to focus on fiqh al-salah, fiqh al-wudu, fiqh al-ghusl, fiqh, etc., because that doesn't bother them. And they suppressed anybody who want to be creative. And our history is full of religious scholars who were beaten and jailed, and scientists who were beaten and jailed. And there, some of their books were even burned. So so the Islamic movement solved what it identified as the problem. Like masajid are empty, people are not practicing Islam, people, etc. So let's bring them back to Islam. All right. And then the Arab Spring. Now, don't get me wrong, all these are problems. Occupation is a problem and need to end. People have to come back to Islam, and dictators have to go. But that should be part of a bigger vision. That should be part of a comprehensive vision and strategy, like the Prophet ﷺ did. As soon as you achieve a milestone, you raise the bar so that you keep your people mobilized and you maintain the momentum. Rasul ﷺ, while signing the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, which means there is a phase that is about to finish, which is the phase of Quraysh and the phase of the Arabian Peninsula. It's about to finish. It did not finish yet. But Quraysh accepted to sign a treaty. So these are no longer rebellions. This is not people who defected from the tribe. No, it's a state to state. That's why the Prophet ﷺ, from his wisdom, great leadership, asked Ali ibn Abi Talib to sign it. Whatever they ask for, we need that signature. Because that signature is a recognition that moving forward, now we are state to state. We are no longer a bunch of people who abandoned the tribe, which was very bad at that time. And that's why it opened the door for other tribes to join, whether they want to join the Quraysh camp or join the Medina camp. Rasul ﷺ realized that that phase is about to finish. It finished after 2 years with Fatah Mecca. It finished after 2, but he realized that there is a phase that he is about to finish. What did he do? He sent his emissary to the leaders of the world. He expanded the field. We're going beyond the Arabian Peninsula. It is that overlap between phases. A phase is finishing, another phase has started. Why? So that you keep people mobilized and united. Because the worst thing that happens when there is stagnation, there will be division. And the worst of people comes out. And we have seen it here. We have seen it here, and we have seen it in the Arab Spring, in the resistance movement. Anytime when people, they think they mission accomplished and they stagnate, all the differences and division come out. And I crisscrossed this country, and I heard the story of almost every community. They will tell you very inspiring stories when they were establishing their mosque, when they were praying like in a basement of church or a room in the university, and they were working to have their own Islamic center. Nobody knows whether you are Sunni or Shi'i, Maliki or whatever. All of these differences were put aside. Everybody, ethnicity is gone. It's not like Arab and Pakistani, and none. The moment they got their centers, the moment they remembered all of these problems, all of these surfaced. Now we have the Arabs on one side and the Pakistani on another side, and then between the Arabs, the Gulf people were separate, and then the Sikhwan, that Salafi. All the differences came out. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did not allow that to happen. He engaged much bigger field and started much bigger challenge, even though the first phase did not finish yet. So I agree with you. These could have been steps if they were part of a vision, but unfortunately they were not. And now I don't think we can afford to repeat any of those mistakes without comprehensive diagnosis that reaches the roots and have a strategy to tackle those roots. I don't think any effort is worth any effort other than managing the status quo. I mean, I appreciate the few people who are doing so much work to manage the mosques and the Islamic Center, but that's managing the status quo. That's not going to get us anywhere. That will guarantee that the bills are paid, the masjid is clean, there will be Jumu'ah, but that will not get us anywhere. So, and when I say tackling the root cause, one on top of the list is to rediscover our religion, to accept that the version of Islam that reached us over those centuries is very defective, very superficial, very rigid, focusing on sha'air and fiqh and rituals and appearances, lacking many essential elements, lacking the sense of mission, very weak focus on maqasid, the ultimate purposes of Islam. There is not enough emphasis on akhlaq, on character. It does not inspire people to be very ambitious. It's not an inspiring, it tells them actually the opposite. It tells them that your prophet died poor and his shield was, what do you call it, marhoon, was with a Jew. At his, I mean, he needed money to the point that he put his shield as like collateral to get, that's what people are told. And can you imagine Prophet ﷺ surrounded by Abu Bakr and Uthman and Abdurrahman ibn Auf, millionaires of that time or billionaires, will let him borrow money and put his shield dir'a as collateral? I mean, is this something that enters the mind? Yeah. And then we're told that the Prophet died poor, and poverty is better. Poor people are better in the sight of Allah, and they enter Jannah first. That's what our people are being told. Is this going to produce ambitious people? No. This is going to produce people who justify failure. They will tell you this is qada and qadar and ibtila, and we are victims, and there is conspiracy, and therefore things could not be better. That's what is being produced now. And that's what people hear in Jumu'ah, even here. We will tell them this, you need to sacrifice this life. This life is not important. Focus on the hereafter, as if you have to choose between the two. Going back to this wahan, yes, this weakness and self-defeat, and not have the self-confidence, all of this can come under wahan, by the way. But Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, I believe, when he said حب الدنيا وكراهية الموت, I'm sure people mastered the Arabic language beyond our imagination at that time. It doesn't mean that the solution is for you to be looking for death. I'm definitely sure that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that's not what he meant. I believe my interpretation of that hadith is that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is telling them basically, when you no longer have a cause or a mission to live for and to sacrifice for, and you start living, just living, that's going to happen to you. So if I want to translate the hadith in today's language, we say, al-wahan is you abandoning your mission, your defining mission. So you become like everybody else, just living and making money and accumulating wealth, etc. But you're not living for something. So I think that's the best way to interpret the hadith, حب الدنيا وكراهية الموت. It's not the solution is for people to hate this life and to look and to wish for death. No, it's basically when you are no longer have a mission that you are ready to sacrifice for, even if it takes to sacrifice your lives. You no longer have that. So you start busy with the work and money and the worldly life. Allahu A'lam.
Yeah, Sheikh, it actually, just the context, like you said, after the liberation, I think hubb dunya is the love of this dunya that made people give up the vision, let's say, to build what they intended to do, to build the great nation and start fighting for power. So that's hubb dunya.
Yeah.
If they had the vision, which some of, like, at least in Algeria, like Abdul Hamid bin Badis and the people that really pushed for the revolution, they would have kept going.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And that's
well,
yeah.
There is no vacuum.
That's a good
there is no vacuum. If you don't have a cause that is preoccupying you, you're going to be preoccupied with this dunya.
Like an eternal vision to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you do this. Subhanallah.
I mean, if you don't have a higher purpose to live for, you are going to become very busy with this worldly life, because first of all, it is very tempting. Human by nature, as the Prophet ﷺ described, they said if they had the mountain of Uhud gold, they want to have another one. That's the human nature. لو كان لابن آدم جبل أحد من ذهب لتمنى أن له الثاني أو كما قال يعني. So there is that natural tendency, but that has to be not suppressed. No, people should be very ambitious and should try to be rich, but rich for a cause, so that they can do more fi sabilillah. That's the missing link. And that's why, unfortunately, we are told to choose between the two. We don't have to choose between the two. You have to work hard as part of your religious duty to be strong, successful, rich, influential, etc. But not for prestige, not just to brag about it, so that you can have more, so that you can do more fi sabilillah. If you have a strong position of influence, you can do more to serve the community and to serve the deen. If you have more money, you can do more connection, anything. If you are healthier, you can do more. So Muslims have to try to have the best health, should try to be as rich as they can be, should try to be very strong and very influential, and aim high and have no limits to their ambition, but they should always have in mind that these are not the goal, these are the means. As one scholar one time was asked, he said that, can Muslim be a zahid even if he is rich or she is rich? He said yes. Zuhud and taqwa and wara has nothing to do with how much money you have. He said that you can be very rich and still very pious and zahid in this life. You're not a money worshipper. And you can be poor and money worshipper, because you are obsessed with money, even though you don't have it. So it's not about how much you have. It's about, is it preoccupying you? Is it here in the heart, or it is in your hands? It is still means for something bigger.
Dr. Ghannouchi.
So,
yes. Sorry.
No,
Yes.
So just to conclude with the Sheikh, so Sulwan can be understood as obsession with this dunya and its power and this, and karahiyat al-maut is disregard of the akhirah, please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Disregard of the akhirah, and disregard and the way, the path to akhirah is to embrace that mission and fulfill it to the best of your ability.
Jazakallah khair.
Yeah. Yes, Nidal.
Yeah, Jazakumullah khairan. This is a very important topic. Actually, I joined this call today to talk about it, and mashallah, you've already covered this topic in a very beautiful way. The practical implication of this. So this is beautiful that we in dunya you need to aim high, you need to be ambitious, you need to even be rich. On top of that, you need to have a mission. So everything is going under this the umbrella of this mission. When it comes to the practical implication of this, and in order to apply that, then let's say someone has their own business, right? And they want really to be rich. They have a mission. They are good Muslims, and they want to even, as you always say, Dr. Ghannouchi, the greater good. It's not only okay, Muslim, no, even humanity. So I would like to help humanity. However, when it comes to apply that, then we have 24 hours in the day, 8 hours sleeping and everything. You have family, and then you're left with, let's say, 10, 15 hours a day, right? If you want to be rich, if you want to, not the aim to be rich, but if you really want to have, can become influencer, to grow your business, to do more, you need to spend more time working, right? And in this case, you have less time for maybe Quran, less time for ibadah, less time for reading tafsir, right? What is your advice, and from your experience, from your knowledge, to overcome this issue? Or if it is an issue,
It
like
is.
per se. Okay.
It is very, very good question. Now, balance in life, it's an eternal challenge. We're going to be struggling until we die to strike balance between the different demands of life. You're right. And I don't think anyone is going to reach a point where they say, I have a perfect balance. Every now and then something will lag behind, and we are always trying to bring things up to speed so that we get as close as possible to that balanced life. وَإِنَّ لِأَهْلِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقٌّ وَإِنَّ لِجَسَدِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقٌّ. That's managing your life in a balanced way. It's very easy to focus on one thing in life, and we have seen people who focused on business, succeeded tremendously, but they lost their families completely. Their children and their family was in very bad shape. And some people did that business at the expense of health, or at the expense of deen, as you mentioned, etc. So, number one, we should try to strike a balance and hold ourselves accountable so that we don't allow anything to be dropped. That's one. Number two, this religion by nature is a collective work. So if you have someone successful in business, and if we are true community and true movement, some people are contributing knowledge, some people have more time, some people are successful in business, so they're contributing money. Not everybody has to do the same thing. Like, for example, someone is successful in business. The best way to serve the community is to continue and grow that business and put more money in the cause. But somebody else who has, for example, like 9-to-5 job, and maybe doesn't have, there is no point in, maybe he has more time or she has more time to contribute, or more skills to contribute to the cause. This is by nature is a collective work where people complement one another. So you're right. I mean, if all of us go into one track, trying to be successful in business and growing and be rich, etc., of course, the cause will not be served efficiently. If all of us neglect this dunya and go and start just reading books and learning and sitting in halaqah, it's not going to help. And it doesn't work. Even the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, we can see that diversity. Some they excelled in, they have very great military skills. So the Prophet used them there. And some people were mostly teaching. We didn't hear about a lot of we didn't hear a lot about Abdullah ibn Umar or Abdullah ibn Mas'ud or Ibn Abbas in the battlefield. We heard them in terms of knowledge. That's their main contribution. We didn't hear about Khalid bin Walid contributing anything in knowledge, because that's not his contribution, etc. So your question, very good question. It's for every one of us to start to try to strike balance, and therefore don't abandon any of your duty or any of the basic things. And then to try to excel in your field. If you are in academia, try to excel in academia. It's not your wajib. Your duty may not be to get more money or much more money to contribute to the cause. Your duty may be to excel in research and academia. If someone is in business, if they have one business, they should aim for the second one, and they should aim for growing it. They may not be doing as much in the masjid. Of course, should not be at the expense of the basic like ibadat and like minimum Quran and minimum things. It shouldn't be at the expense of that, but maybe they will not have the energy or the time or even the skills to do much in terms of articulating the message or spreading the message or da'wah, etc., or even civic engagement. But they have money. They can contribute money. And this cause requires all of that. That's why the success story of the Prophet ﷺ had very successful business people, had very strong generals, skillful, had very strong people in knowledge and aqidah and shara and teaching. And the combination generated that very impactful movement.
Jazakumullah khairan. That's very important. What you said, Dr. Ghanoush, about balancing and look at your top skills.
Yeah.
Because that's where you remind me with something. I work with professionals and we talk about career. So the first thing we do is when they come and ask us, okay, where should I focus or what should be my field? Then we go with something called career clarity, and we go with SWOT analysis, strengths and weaknesses, and opportunities. And after working with them for a couple of sometimes week, we end up saying, okay, here you go. You have these top skills that if you focus on, you're gonna be successful, inshallah. But most likely you're gonna be ahead of people because you have these skills. So the top priority for you as an let's say employee, it needs to be this and that. So they know their skills and they focus on their skills in order to achieve more. So you just remind me with this. So yes, maybe let's say for me, I need to say, okay, what are the top skills for me or top priorities or the things that I can do for this mission and for life? So then I, let's say, list them down and maybe focus on the top 3 or 4, let's say 5 skills. And these are skills that I can benefit let's say people with in my life.
Yeah. So basically, everybody should strike the balance between the basics and, as you mentioned, excel in the top skills where they can make the biggest contribution. And then the collective work where people complement each other, because we lost that big time. Nowadays, we have everybody wants to do everything. You have someone who is wealthy. They want to establish the masjid. They want to run it. They want to be the khatib. They want to be everything. You have the imam. He wants to be manager. He wants to be. You can. This requires collective work, and where people have different skills, they complement each other.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Suhail. See you next Sunday, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.